Alright, hello, and welcome to another Mr. Pisto Plays. We have the Dimir Guild as our next set of MTGA Brawl, and this is my Ashiok Control. Ashiok is a 5-mana Dimir Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. I'm sure if you've played a lot of Brawl on MTGA, you will have seen this card quite often when you play against the Dimir Guild. You more often than not will play against this guy or girl. It's +1. You get a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature that whenever it attacks or blocks, opponent exiles the top two cards of their library. Its -3 is return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and then that player exiles a card from their hand. So it's disruption in more than one way. And the -7, which if you can defend it, comes up pretty quick. You can cast 3 spells from among face-up cards that opponents own from exile without paying their mana cost. So get it to 7. If you get a couple blocks or a couple attacks in with the 2/3s, then you can probably end the game with that ultimate. The deck has a small sub-theme of rogues. We have the Thieving Skydiver. It's a 2-mana 2/1 flyer Merfolk rogue, and its kicker of X, and X can't be 0. Not really relevant in this format, but in other formats it is. When it enters the battlefield, if it's kicked, you can steal an artifact with converted mana cost X or less, and if it's an equipment, you can attach it. So it's nice to take those Arcane Signets or any kind of equipment that they may have. Soaring Thought Thief is a 2-mana 1/3 flash flyer. So flash is nice. You can throw it in at the end of their turn. As long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues get +1/+0. And whenever one or more rogue attacks, each player mills 2 cards. So the idea is you're filling up the graveyard for the big rogue payoff that is in the deck. Glasspool Mimic or Glasspool Shore. It's a land if you need it early, but it's also a rogue for 3 mana. And it copies one of your creatures, so you can have 2 of something. Brazen Borrower, the petty theft instant where you can pay 1 and a blue to return an non-land permanent to its owner's control, and then you can flash in a 3/1 flyer for 2 blue and a 1 colorless. And it is also a rogue. Then we have the Nighthawk Scavenger. This kind of gets fueled by that soaring Thought Thief, and also just playing cards. People play cards, they play instants, they play sorceries, they crack a fetch land. All of a sudden you have a 3/3 Death Touch flyer lifelink. And its power and toughness are equal to 1 plus the number of cards of different types, characteristics of their front face. Then we have the Rankle Master of Pranks, so 4-mana 3/3 flying haste creature, which is also a rogue. When it deals damage, you can choose any of these 3. Each player discards a card, each player loses a life, draws a card. Each player sacrifices a creature, so if they have one big thing out, Rankle can take care of it. If you need to draw a card and you're in the late game and you got lots of mana, you can draw a card and potentially use it first. And if the player only has a few cards left, you can make them pick to discard one. These rogues all pay off for Zareth San, the Trickster. This is another legendary creature that some people might think of using as their commander. It's unfortunate that if he's in the command zone, you can't use the ability of the black, blue, and 2 colorless to return an unblocked rogue, so you can rebuy your Mimic or your Brazen Borrower or your Thieving Skydiver. You can bring them back to your hand to use them again. And you can put this guy in if they're unblocked, and then you return a permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So by milling them with this guy, or getting them to mill, or just any kind of play, and then you'll be able to steal something from their graveyard with Zareth. He costs 5 mana and 3 colorless to flash him in if you want to do it just without activating it from a rogue. Or you can pay a black, a blue, and 2 colorless to return one of these to your hand and put him in tapped and attacking. It's a really strong effect and ability. Then we have some utility creatures. Sir Conrad the Grim. I really like this card. Whenever a creature dies or a card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, he deals 1 damage to each opponent. And you can fuel your Zareth San with him via the 1 black and a colorless to mill a card. Solemn Simulacrum, basically outside of green decks, is one of your most important ramp spells, and also he draws you a card. Artis Oracle of Half-Truth, here again is another legendary creature that you can use as your Dimir commander. I'm not keen on him. I like him in the 60 more so as your commander. But as your commander, the repeated effect of entering the battlefield, the target opponent gets to put them into your 3 cards into 2 piles, 1 face down, 1 face up. Then you pick one. So his effect is very good, and the fact that he has menace means he's hard to block. But I think he's really good in the 60. Then we have the Fairy Formation. It's a 5 mana 5/4 flyer, so just that in and of itself is very good. And the late game mana sink of creating a 1/1 blue fairy and also drawing a card can be very helpful in the late game. We have a couple of creature removal-y type spells. We have the Murderous Rider, which is 2 black and a colorless for its swift end ability. You have destroying target creature or planeswalker, and you lose 2 life. And it's followed up by a 3 mana 2/3 that has lifelink, and when it dies, you put it on the bottom of your library, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. We have Massacre Worm, great card. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until the end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So you can get rid of lots of little things, or you can attack and get them to block, and then use the Massacre Worm to finish it off, kind of deal. And then the last creature in the deck is a counterspell, a 5/4 for 2 blue and 3 colorless. The Voracious Great Shark has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, counter target artifact or creature spell. That's the creature suite of the deck. If you have any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments below. And if you are enjoying the video, smash that like button and maybe subscribe. That would be awesome, so you can see more Brawl content. So up next we have the non-creature spells. So I've kind of put them in a few different piles. We have draw/card selection. So we have opt, which is 1 blue to scry 1, draw 1, and it's an instant. Anticipate, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library. Metamize Prophecy, so it takes a while for it to get there, but you scry 2, so you can select kind of what your next draws are, and then you can choose any card you want, and then whenever you cast that spell, you draw 2 cards, and then you get to look at the top 2 cards of a player's libraries. It's okay. Omen of the Sea, 1 blue and a colorless. It has flash, it's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, then draw a card, and you can sacrifice it to scry 2. So you effectively are scrying 4 for 5 mana. It's pretty good in drawing a card. There's a little bit more selection with the Silundi Vision, so you get to look at the top 6 cards of your library, reveal an instant or sorcery card, put it in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. Or you could play it as a land early game. Foreboding Fruit, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life, and if you play 3 black mana, you get a food token. Not so much in this, or you can do that, but it's not as likely to happen. It's a 1 black 2 colorless for a sorcery. And then Grim Tutor, search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. You lose 3 life. A sorcery of 2 black and a colorless. Add 3 mana to any one of your spells, and you can go get it. The next pile that we have are removal spells. Feed the Swarm, enchantment removal for black, or destroying a creature, but you do lose a little bit of life. Heartless Act, you can play with combat of creatures that have counters on them, or you can just straight up destroy something. Murder, 3 black, or 2 black and a colorless instant. Destroy target creature. Pretty self-explanatory there. Eat to Extinction. You can deal with a creature or a planeswalker, and then you can look at the top card of your library, and put that card into your graveyard. So if you don't want to draw land late game, or you don't want to draw an expensive spell early game, you can put it in your graveyard, and it's cost 1 black and 3 colorless. Extinction Event. It is a half sweeper. A board wipe, choose even or odd, and you exile creatures with a converted mana cost of the chosen value. With Ashiok, you can then play those cards if you can ultimate it. So, pretty good in this case. Erebos' Extinction. This has 2 or double sides. You can either remove a creature by giving it -6/-6 and you gaining some life, or you can exile a bunch of cards from a graveyard, and then if you do end up ultimating our Ashiok, you could play those cards that you exiled. Then we have some hand disruption with Covetous Urge for a black or a blue, a black or a blue, a black or a blue, a black or a blue. 4 blue black, either blue or black mana. Reveal the card your opponent reveals their hand. You can choose an online card from it, and you can play that card as long as you get as exiled with any color mana. So pick and choose what you want to do. Palaka Predation and Palaka Caverns enters as a land if you need it, and the target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it with converted mana cost 3 or greater. That player discards that card. And then Finding Agonizing Remorse. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an online card from it, or a card from their graveyard. Someone missed this earlier in a game that I was playing. They could have exiled a card that would have probably saved them the game, and in the end I won because they didn't exile the card from the graveyard. So that's something to remember when you're playing this card. Then we have one, it's Reanimation Spell, but it's also a land. Agadeem's Awakening. For 3 black and X, you can return X different converted mana cost creatures. So if you X is 3, you can bring a 1, a 2, and a 3. There are no 1s in the deck, so you're ideally bringing a 2 or a 3, possibly a 4. So you're looking to pay anywhere from probably 6 mana is the sweet spot. 7 would be ideal, or upwards of 9 if you want to bring Black Massacre Worm. Then we have 2 ramp spells in Midnight Clock, blue and 2 colorless for our artifact that taps for blue mana. You can pay 1 and 2 colorless to put an hour counter on it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock, on each upkeep, I should say. And then when it has 12 counters on it, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your deck, draw 7 cards, and exile this spell or this artifact. So ideally you get it to trigger at the end of your opponent's turn, so that you get a fresh 7 when it becomes your turn. Arcane Signet, pretty self-explanatory. A 2 mana artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color of your commander's color identity. We got 4 more spells. Drari's Disruption. Now we're in a few counter spells. Counter spell unless its controller pays 1, or you could play it as a land if you need to. Convolute. I was thinking about cancel, but this is way less mana intensive. So counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. So you can get pretty late into the game and this still be useful. Sublime Epiphany. I love this card. Choose 1 or more for 6 mana, 2 blue and 4 colorless. Counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, target player draws a card. So it's easily a 2, 3, 4 for 1 for 6 mana. It's great. And then finally we have another Planeswalker, Jace the Mirror Mage. For 2 blue and a colorless, you get a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. That's +1 is scry 2. 0, draw a card and reveal it. Remove a number of loyalty counters equal to the card's converted mana cost from Jace the Mirror Mage. But if you kick it for 2 extra generic mana, you get a copy that is non-legendary, and it says starting loyalty of 1, and it does the same thing. So they play very well together as a mirror. All right, and lastly we have our land suite. So we have Castle Vantress. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island, of which we have 8 islands. Taps to add a blue, and you can pay 2 blue and 2 colorless to scry 2. We have those 8 islands. We have Castle Lochthwain, 2 black and a colorless to draw a card, and then you lose life equal to the cards in your hand. Taps for a black and enters play tapped unless you control a swamp, of which we have 7. Then we have the Muckwater Pathway and the Clearwater Pathway. You gotta play it as a blue land or a black land, whatever you need at the time. Dismal Backwater enters play tapped. You get gain a life. It taps for a blue or a black. Temple of Deceit enters the battlefield tapped. Scry 1, so look at the top card of your library, put it on top or the bottom, and you get a blue or a black mana. Command Tower in every single deck unless it's monocolored. Taps add a color of your commander's color identity. And finally, the Fabled Passage. Search for a basic land, put it in the battlefield tapped. If you control 4 or more lands, untap it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Ashiok Nightmare Muse Control, the Dimir Commander. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the games. If you're not going to watch the games right away, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.